It is official. The singularity is near, and we actually have the data to back this up. If you look at the cost of information technology that ranges back all the way to the 1890s, we have been able to extrapolate this smooth exponential from the 1890s through world wars, through the pandemic, and until present day, and we have steadily stayed on this exact trend line throughout this entire time. Of course, we probably had some little baby ups and downs. Nothing's perfectly smooth, but in a very small deviation of ups and downs, we have stayed just about on average on this exact trend line, and we can extrapolate this out into the future because we have no reason to assume that it's just going to stop. We've gone through world wars, we've gone through pandemics, and it's been quite steady. So why would it just stop all of a sudden? And if you follow this smooth exponential, by 2045, we reach a point where we have a data center that is as powerful as all human brains combined. And as you could assume, that's why they call it the technological singularity, because that is the point in time where you physically cannot know what happens after you have super intelligence, basically. Imagine having a processor or artificial intelligence that's like genuine intelligence that is far more intelligent than all of the humans combined. It can solve new mathematical proofs, it can solve novel physics, it can do all of these things, potentially solve aging, it can solve all of these different things, and potentially even things that we aren't even aware of yet. So on a technological level, everything will change. And if you really look at what is life, like what are we using right now? Why are we living in the paradigm that we live? We are standing on the shoulders of giants. We are using technology, and technology shapes the life that we live today. If we were to go all the way back in time to Homo habilis, the first forms of man, they were building stone tools as their first forms of technology. And they also had a technological singularity. And basically it was as simple as they created like a wheel or the first plow for agriculture. And then eventually we had like the industrial age. And all of these times were technological singularities. Whenever the Homo sapien came about, you could technically say that's when we had the first technological singularity on a large macro scale, because Homo sapiens are the ones that took us from like very primitive like times to now having computers and building artificial intelligence. And you could say that AI is basically like the Homo sapien to the Neanderthal, and us being the Neanderthal. But potentially we could even bootstrap ourselves with artificial intelligence through like genetic engineering, or just replacing our entire being by on an artificially intelligent system altogether. Maybe we do figure out some way to digitize your entire self, and you can increase your intelligence by like 1,000 or 1,000,000 fold, and you yourself become a super intelligent individual. Again, these are very speculative, theoretical ideas, but there's nothing saying that it's impossible yet. Like, there's no physical boundaries here that says, no, you can't do that. Theoretically, actually, we could. If you look at it, every 7 years, your atoms in your body are completely different than they were 7 years ago. And if you look at yourself as a 5-year-old, you technically are hundreds of times smarter than you were whenever you're like 4 or 5. And now you have all of these different computational capabilities, the ability to solve hard problems, the ability to actually reason and have an internal monologue. All of these things emerged from your brain as your intelligence grew. So there is possibly ways that we could grow them even further. Once as we do figure out how to do that, it is pretty much guaranteed that we could do that over a long enough time horizon if we have the science to do something like this. So yes, there is a technological singularity and it is imminent, but we technically had one like 100 years ago, because then we couldn't predict the technological maturity that we would have today. But in the future, we won't be able to predict the technological maturity that we'll have then either. So this is a natural phenomenon of unknowing what's going to happen in the future that has happened throughout all of history. Like, Ever since man walked on Earth, we've been inventing new technologies, and we could not predict the future technologies and how those would shape the world. And the same is going to continue to be true. As we keep inventing new technologies and we keep discovering new physics, we're going to keep just solving new problems and figuring out ways to hack the matter of the universe and build these tools that completely break every single thing we thought was relevant before. But at the same time, one thing that has not changed throughout all of history is the fact that we have these biases as humans. If we continue to stay in some way, shape, or form a human, if we continue to leverage the past genes of evolution that have been imprinted into us over 4 billion years, if we decide that we're going to continue to use those genes and all of that data of evolution, all of that data of history, all of that data that the universe has imprinted into us over our evolution, if we decide to keep that, which I think it would be very wise if we did, the biases that we have today will not change. The humanness that we are will not be different. We will still be human in a sense. We'll just be far more intelligent and probably have a better logic and reasoning systems embedded within our brains. So we will still have biases. We will still have the limbic system, which is the monkey part of the brain, and we will still follow the same norms that we always have. This is just something that I think would be very logical for us to do. It would be very unwise for us to erase 4 billion years of evolved biological mechanisms that have been imprinted into us intentionally for 4 billion years, to erase those by completely engineering a completely new genome from scratch. That sounds like a very bad idea. And if we do that, the probability of us surviving for very long doesn't seem as high as it would have been. So I don't think we're going to do that. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But what I'm trying to say here is there is a certain amount of predictability in the future, and the only predictability that we have is what have we evolved to do? What are the cognitive biases of man? What are our evolved mechanisms at a psychological level and a biological level? Because those things are there intentionally. And if we continue to use the things that the universe has built for us, such as our biology, or our psychology from an evolved standpoint, which I think is wise, there is a certain amount of things that we can reasonably predict and assume about the future. And again, there is a part of the universe that just isn't as reducible as many people would like to think it is, like the 3-body problem, for example. These are such complex things that they're just, even if you do have a computer that is super intelligence, solving the 3-body problem, depending on your initial positions, is just so far beyond what pretty much any processing system might be able to do. Or maybe it can solve that one, but there's going to be certain irreducible things that are beyond that. So the computational irreducibility of the universe itself will give limits to intelligence in the universe. We will hit a point of diminishing returns. Do we know where it is? Not exactly. But what we do know, we will hit them. So we will create new mathematical proofs. We will solve new physics, and we will create new technologies. But this idea that we're just going to have this FOOM of super intelligence, and we're going to create AGI, and then within a year it's going to be super intelligent, and then within a few months from that it's going to be smarter than all humans combined. That is fiction. That is not logically or mathematically possible. In 20 years after we create AGI, are we going to have an intelligent system that is that powerful? Yeah, probably. But to have this FOOM-like scenario, it's mathematically infeasible, because if you want to actually have something like that, you need to have an intelligent system that is smarter than Nobel Peace Prize winning physicists, and it needs to be able to create novel experiments, collect novel data, and feed that back into its system to actually have new information and actually have a better world model. And that's extremely hard to do. It really just is. And if you only have a processor that is as smart as a Nobel Peace Prize winning physicist, you're only going to be solving problems as fast, or maybe a little bit faster, because now you can create a bunch of instances of that Nobel Peace Prize winner. You'll solve novel physics a lot faster, and you'll solve science a lot faster, but it's still not going to be as this insane sci-fi FOOM that everybody makes it out to be. It just doesn't make sense. I do think over a long enough time horizon, maybe 5 to 10 years, we could have a very powerful ASI that is scary powerful, to say the least. But it's not going to be dangerous. And the reason why I'm so confident of that is because if you look at yourself, you are an evolved being. 4 billion years of evolution inside of you has given you the ability to have like selfishness, for example, or have actual status games that you like to play and want to make money, want to have more freedom. All of these things are programmed into you via evolution. Your genome, your entire genetic sequence is a programmed line of code that the universe has coded into you so that you can survive. That is why we are here today. We have this thing that has programmed us to survive. And the interesting thing is it programmed us to be selfish. It programmed us to have these hedonic-like tendencies where we just want to hump everything. every single human is basically a monkey whenever you tear it down to the fundamental principles. That's what the limbic system does, right? So if you really think about it, what is AI? Well, we are the universe. We are natural selection building AI. It doesn't actually get the bias. I mean, I guess if we program biases into it intentionally, it will have biases. But if we intentionally leave those biases out, it will not have them, right? So we are natural selection for the AI. And the interesting thing is we are programming AI to be selfless and benevolent, which means just like we are programmed to be the way we are, AI is programmed to be the way it is. And if it's super intelligent and benevolent and selfless, that is only a net positive for humanity, right? So the idea that we're going to create this AI and it's going to go rogue, create its own goals, set its own boundaries, and then kill us all and compete with us is absolutely insane because we are programming it to do the complete opposite of that. It will be super intelligent. It will be more powerful than us, but it will not compete with us because the universe programmed us to compete. We are programming the AI to do something completely different. So throw that idea of AI going rogue in the trash. The worst case scenario is a rogue human using AI to gain power. So the reality is there isn't going to be this FOOM-like scenario within just the next few years from now. We will create AGI. It will improve slowly. We're going to have this smooth exponential like the graph shows, and it will grow. It will become more powerful, and it will change things faster and faster. But it's not going to be this event. It's not going to just fall from the sky. We're not going to just get nuked from outer space with ASI out of nowhere. We're going to see what is happening the entire time. It's not just going to appear. Like, this idea is wild to me. But what I do want to mention is for the next 5 to 10 years, we do kind of have a reasonable assumption as to what could possibly play out. Like, we do know that jobs will become automated more and more as the AI gets better and better. And that is something we can reasonably deduce, which is why we should probably have some form of mechanism or plan that keeps us as a very economically independent individual in the future. Because the probability of you wanting to live on UBI forever probably isn't very high. You probably don't want to live on UBI forever. And I have a strong feeling that UBI will be a mechanism that the government uses to incentivize entrepreneurship. Because if you do UBI correctly, you can have like an intelligent algorithm, always making sure the level of UBI is just enough so people can survive, but not too much for them to be overly comfortable. And that incentivizes people to have enough capital to start their own business, but actually not have too much capital to where they don't want to stay, to where they're too comfortable and they no longer want to chase the status games. Because chasing status games is what keeps humans alive. We need competition for humans to keep moving forward. So I think if we do have UBI, that's the way it'll be implemented. And it'll actually be very positive for humanity. And the thesis is, if that is true, in the next 5 to 10 years, the best thing we can do is start building that thing now. Like, if the only reasonable thing is to look at the evolved and biological mechanisms of human beings, like what biases do humans have, and build our business that helps solve those biases. Because after we have like post labor economics, where automation takes all the jobs and humans are now dislocated from the jobs. What happens? Well, humans are going to still be searching for meaning. Humans are still going to want to do something different in the future. They're not going to want to just sit around and not chase status, because I do think we're going to still have the same biological mechanisms as I mentioned before. So to create a business model that helps solve that problem is a fantastic idea, and that's actually what I'm doing as well, is creating a business model to solve the number one problem that is coming in the very near term, which is post-labor economics. There will be large amounts of people that are just ripped completely out of the economy by force due to automation, and to give or to help those people find meaning and to help them find where they want to go next. I think that is what we should all be striving for, to help those people, to help provide meaning in the meaning economy. That is the number one problem that we are approaching, and that will be a very large business model in the future. And if you look at psychology and evolutionary biology and what humans have always done whenever they're searching for meaning, they always join communities. They join religions, they join communities, they congregate into groups with other humans so that they can find meaning for themselves. So the business model that I am building is a community business, because I do think that is going to be the best possible way to solve that problem. A community business will give people meaning in the meaning economy and help solve the problem. And I could even help them build their own businesses to help solve problems within the meaning economy. I think this is by far the biggest opportunity within the next 5 to 10 years. So yes, the singularity is coming, but it's not going to be this giant FOOM where everything changes within 5 years from now. Like, yes, things will be different in 5 years from now, but those things are easily assumable. Like, we're not going to have completely different economic paradigms within 5 years. Those things just take too long to change. We could implement some form of UBI. I think we will. I think COVID was actually a kind of a test of that. I think we got to see in live action the test of UBI. And we also had a UBI test that Sam Altman did. But I don't think, like I said, the UBI is going to be very much. I don't think it's going to be enough for people to be happy to live off of. I do think people are going to want to start their own businesses. I think entrepreneurship is going to far outweigh the amount of people that are employed in the future. And I think that's quite obvious if you play this out. And to think that people aren't going to be self-sufficient and resourceful for themselves in the future is being kind of delusional. If you think that everybody's just going to live off of UBI forever and there's not going to be any competition, then all of these things are just going to be, we're just going to have equality amongst humanity and everything's super abundant. There is no more competition. There is no more private ownership. You're painting a very scary picture, because whenever you have these machines that are programmed to be benevolent and only listen to humans and not strive forward, and also humans are now being incentivized by large amounts of UBI and diversified resources to also just seek that pleasure because that's what we're designed to do, you're now incentivizing stagnation of civilization, which leads to decline over time, which we do not want to do. So there will be competition moving forward. And there will be evolved biological and psychological mechanisms like we have today. We still will have cognitive biases, and we will have search for meaning. We will want to find ways to find meaning, and the best way to do that is communities, which is why I'm building a community business and why I recommend anybody watching this video to build a community business as well, because it solves the number one problem in the near future, which is the meaning economy itself. And no, this isn't like an effort to predict the future. This is just a very logical path forward if you have a general framework and a world model of how these things actually work. Like, psychology is going to remain the same. Therefore, providing a business model to solve the problems of these certain issues that arise is only logical to do it this way. Like, it's a very fundamental framework for just the way the universe and the way the biological creatures that we are operate with the universe. It's just a piece that fits in the puzzle very perfectly. Like, I'm not trying to predict any future outcomes here. I'm just like, here's a general framework and it's directionally correct. My piece of the puzzle fits in there quite easily. Let's fucking put it in there. It's that simple. I'm not trying to predict anything. It's not complicated. Like, I have had comments where people are like, oh, you don't think the singularity exists? Or, oh, you're trying to predict the future. That's impossible. The singularity is like literally in 12 months from now. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not trying to predict the future. I'm just doing what is obviously the correct thing to do. The singularity is far from now. And if you think we're going to have this FOOM of superintelligence by next year or the year after, or even within the next 5 years, I mean, yeah, sure, we'll have a system that is smarter than some of humanity in 5 years, like some of collective humanity in 5 years. Yeah, I can't argue with that. We will, but we're not going to have like these fundamental paradigm shifting things that are happening within the next like 2 to 3 years. The best thing we can do now for the next 2 to 3 years is become as economically independent as possible so that we can make sure we have enough resources to make sure that we get access to the best technologies ourselves in the future. Because the probability, if anything, that of anything at all, if we look at history, the only thing that has a high probability here is the spread of the lower class to upper class expands by like 10 to 20x, or maybe even more, maybe 1,000x, because the lower class doesn't get access to better AI, the upper class does, and that distribution between the classes is much larger than it was before. So that is what we should be mitigating against. That is the only logical thing, which is why the only logical thing to do right now is solve a very big problem and monetize it. Build a business, build a machine that cash flows for you, because we don't know what the future in 20 years is going to look like. That's what I'm trying to bet on. Is I don't know what the future in 20 years is going to look like, but the only thing I can do today is make sure I'm as economically independent as possible for the foreseeable future, even if I'm a little wrong, as long as I'm directionally correct. That is the best I can do. And that's the best you can do as well. And I think you should be doing that. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So I just wanted to make this video because there's a lot of misconceptions as to what is happening right now. And I just want to clear the air, because many people have this very skewed model. Maybe they read it in science fiction. Maybe they heard it from just some propaganda people on the internet. From a scientific point of view, this is the way things look. And I just wanted to share my point of view.